Thanks everyone for staying. This, I believe, is the last session of the day, and I'm sure you're all very tired, so we'll make it very entertaining. As you know, I like to think that, as in all good events, and this has been an excellent event, they've left the best for last. So my name is Jack Genovese. I'm a research manager at Ampere. I lead the sports broadcasting research effort at Ampere. You may have seen some of our research actually earlier if you were here in the room, presented by my colleague Dan. I hope we'll be able to actually get dive in a little deeper into some of the themes touched upon in that presentation. And to do that, we've got two excellent guests. We've got Pete Parmenter from DAZN, Executive Vice President of Business Development, and Simon Brydon, who is Senior Director of Sports Rights and Anti-Piracy at Synamedia. To start with, I refuse to believe that anyone in this room do not know you, but if you could introduce yourselves and your company very quickly, that would be fantastic. Thanks.
Sure. I think your colleague Dan did a great job of this earlier on, actually, so thanks, Dan. Didn't agree with everything, but most of it, yeah. DAZN, pure play OTT streaming business. I think most of you will know what we're trying to do, having seen the presentation earlier on. As head of business development, I'm responsible for essentially distribution of the DAZN application, the DAZN service to third-party platforms. So across app stores, across our telco partners, across some of our channel partners now, some of our fast distribution, which I'm sure we'll get on to today. So distribution, in a nutshell.
Thanks.
I'm Simon Brydon, and I am the Senior Director of Sports, Media and Entertainment Anti-Piracy, and a few other things at the moment. I think we had a DAZN presentation almost from Ampere, and then John Espen showed a lot of Synamedia slides, which, the iceberg, things very familiar to me, so quite a lot of our view on anti-piracy. Thank you, John Espen, if you're still here for that. And we are a technology business in broadcast, security, anti-piracy. We have a video network business. We have, as I say, a security business. Yeah.
Fantastic, thanks. I've been indicated to encourage you to speak closer to the mic.
Better if I cover my face anyway, so.
Well, I'll follow up immediately from your introduction to ask a question on what are the technologies that are driving monetization of sports television at the moment, and what can vendors like Synamedia fit into where they can fit into the value chain?
Oh, wow, what a question. What drives monetization in sport? Well, the first thing is the quality of the sport. I mean, let's not get away from that. You can have all the technology, you can have all the broadcast infrastructure, but if you don't have the right content, and that is my background, quality content, so you have to start with the right content and then the distribution model. Obviously, I started delivering internet television long before an OTT had been invented, before YouTube had been invented. And we used the internet to match audience to content that traditional broadcasts didn't use. So first of all, OTT world can do that. That is a way to reach a niche market where traditional television doesn't reach. But it's escalated so quickly, and with DAZN pioneering the way, that the OTT world is now almost fully replacement of potential traditional television. Peter, I'm sure we'll talk about DAZN's actual move into more traditional distribution than just OTT. So it's about monetization, choosing all platforms of reach to the audience. I don't think we're yet 100% where OTT is full replacement broadcast. Secondly, the means of monetization, obviously, sport relies on pay television. You will hear a lot of people talking about fast channels here. I mean, fast channel, what's that? It's television, isn't it? You know, commercial television dressed up as fast. So let's not get away from it. There is a drive for free distribution now, ad-funded. We have a smart ad technology capability, and that will be increasingly important with pressure, and we'll turn to that in a minute, with pressure on spend and OTT. clearly certain sports are not going to drive subscriptions, and they're going to have to turn to advertising and clever means to commercialize their rights, because they're not going to be getting paying customers. So I think that's going to be very important for tier 2, 3, 4 sports rights going ahead.
Thank you. Pete, a lot of what Simon just said, I'm sure, resonates to you, and we've looked before at the strategy that DAZN has undertaken, hopefully fairly reflected in our presentation. As we discussed, there's a sudden, there's been a rapid growth in subscriptions for DAZN. We're seeing a bit of a evolution of the business model, and DAZN has been essentially on the record saying that it's aiming for run rate profitability by 2024. In your words, from your perspective, what does that mean for the business, and what does that mean maybe for the streaming sports model more widely?
It means a bit more grey hair than when that photo was taken, for one. Okay, so look, we've been focused. I'm going to concentrate maybe on three things. We've been focused on execution. Getting the foundations in place was tremendously complex. We've done that. The technical foundations of delivering sport, multiple sports at scale, is now there. We've been focusing over the last 12, 18 months on our proposition, our user experience, tiering, pay-per-view, the addition of betting in 3 of our core markets, looking at e-commerce opportunities, looking at the next generation of NFTs with boxing highlights in Japan as an example. So really, really digging down on getting the proposition right, pricing, making sure there's a price point for everybody in the market so we don't discriminate. Secondly, we've integrated the acquisition of 11 Sport, which has fast-tracked us into a number of other new markets for us, which has been fantastic. And as part of that acquisition, we also acquired Team Whistle, which has given us an award-winning content studio to really ramp up our both on-platform and off-platform content portfolio, which has been great. And from a distribution perspective, we've been sort of continuing what we call our sort of pragmatic partnership approach. You'll have seen we've launched recently on Amazon channels. We've launched in Germany and Spain to begin with, but it's a global deal, and we'll continue that rollout globally over the next few months. We have jumped on the fast bandwagon. We think it's a fantastic way to generate some advertising revenues. That's the reason we're doing it. The brand awareness and the awareness of the DAZN subscription service on the back of that is a luxury, which is a very much a nice to have. And I think you'll see we just announced that we launch a linear channel on Sky tomorrow. So both the OTT worlds and the linear worlds can collide, and the reason we do that is because we want to give the whole household choice. You might want a lean-back experience to watch your sport. You might want to watch just highlights on the move. With the way that we're distributing the service and the way that we're building the service, we believe we're giving customers that choice, which is ultimately what we're in the business for.
And I think your point just here possibly partially answers the question I wanted to ask you both, which is what does the streaming model service, what does it provide to customers that previous sports broadcasting models didn't?
First thing for tier 2, T3 sports is you can reach your audience. Also, we saw with Ampere about leagues going direct. The NBA don't need to go direct to consumer in the USA. But in great areas of the world, their product is in demand, and it is a better model for them to go direct to consumer with NBA League Pass. I don't want to take issue with Ampere, but I think you'll find UFC have wholesaled their entire league, product in the States to ESPN. So they don't want to go D2C in their main market. They wholesaled the subs to ESPN as part of the broadcast deal. So they get more money as part of the wholesaling than the D2C that they would. So the first thing, you can reach a market you would not reach by traditional broadcast. When I started broadcasting cycling in 2003 all over the world, no broadcaster would touch 200 and of the days we did live, 200 live were not available on television. So the audience could get it. The next thing, OTT obviously get to be able to wrap a whole lot of new services around it. Peter will talk about DAZN's approach to betting, increased graphics, data, things that are just the customer begins to want, integration to social media, polling, feedback. You can do a much more immersive service. All of those, of course, are nice to haves, but the fundamental that the person wants is the quality content that they like, delivered efficiently, reliably, because that's the first, they just want to watch their football game. The rest is fluff on top, additional, extra means to revenue. But if your fundamental business model doesn't work, then the fluff is really of no use whatsoever.
I don't really like talking about tiers of sport. I happen to be a big football fan, but you might be a chess fan, and that might be your absolute passion. What we do agree on is your passions in both of those examples can be served really, really well through OTT, because we don't discriminate. The other obvious thing to say is technical scale, yeah? We don't have to choose which matches on a Saturday afternoon or a Friday night or a Sunday to show. We can show them all. On a Saturday in Japan, we can have up to 26, I think even 30 concurrent live games on the platform at any one stage. That's very, very difficult to deliver traditionally, but it's the scale and the technology that can give you that. The two obvious things that come out of this is a direct connection directly with you as a consumer. We can see what you're watching. We can give you more of what we think you'll like with your permission. And obviously with the data that's coming out of the back of what people are watching and the crossovers of one sport to another, we can enable packages that we think will better serve those customers at different price points. So it's all of that. It's the connectivity, the data, the one-to-one relationship, and the technical scale, I think, in a nutshell, is the difference.
Yeah, and the scale of the offering, and you were mentioning the number of concurrent games you can show at the same time. I'm sure there are similarities to be made with sort of general entertainment, the term we used in our presentation, services when it comes to the sheer size of the catalogs of the likes of Amazon Prime, Netflix, compared to linear broadcasters. That's obviously what made them popular among audiences. And in fact, looking at the wider streaming industry, we saw it before. Growth has certainly slowed down in mature markets. The competition is as fierce as ever, and as a result, churn is rising for many services. We've seen also investor sentiment turn more towards profitability and away from growth at all costs. As a result of that, we've seen that several services have raised their prices across the world. The question, which is maybe somewhat provocative, I suppose, is do you think that streaming platforms more generally price themselves too low?
I think certainly when I started way back, we definitely did. I think at the moment, the streaming platforms, and Pete will talk about the specific DAZN and their pricing, but I think at the moment, if you looked at the cost of what you need for OTT platforms worldwide, across Amazon Prime, Netflix, et cetera, then we get to our local domestic, Sky in the UK, BT, Amazon Prime for Premier, et cetera. The market can't sustain any more money. The pressure on consumer spending on what you are required to purchase is now too high. And therefore, whether the services are too expensive, it's a moot point for each service to decide. But what there are definitely is too many. And that, of course, leads to piracy. Each individual service has only got its own content. It can only carry their own rights. The super aggregated illegal pirate can carry everything. So without getting into really deep detail, there is a direct correlation between the number of OTT services you pay for and whether you pirate content. If in consumer research conducted by Ampere Analysis, they found that if you were paying for 5 OTT services, you were 91% pirating content as well. If you paid for no OTT services, that went under 50%, and it graded. So the more people paid legally, the more they then chose to pirate content, because the cost of those volume of services is too high. So each organization needs to decide what their price point is, but the price point of the market is, in general, is unsustainable.
I want to let Pete answer, but then I'll go back to your point about fragmentation and piracy.
I'm not going to comment on other people's pricing, but I think it's fairly obvious to see where it's going with the price hikes you're seeing on SVOD services around the world. For us, I think we've raised prices in certain markets, but what we've done is moved away from a one-size-fits-all and tried to be a lot more flexible to build tiers that talk to consumer demand. Clearly, sport is different, especially when you have exclusive AAA rights in a particular market, but really flexibility of offering, and even including a free offering, which we'll see launched over the course of the next 12 months. Really talking to your affordability question, I think is what we're in the market to deliver. You know, there's a rights market, and they cost what they cost, and we've all got to build a sustainable business. Hence, you saw the Ampere analysis of our financials, and you can see where our profitability margins are going, hopefully out the back of 23 into 24, and that's why. So absolutely, it's a changing market, and the market is settling, but giving consumers choice to make sure they're not paying necessarily for stuff that they don't want is super, super important to us.
That's a very interesting point, and it seems as if, Simon, to actually link back to what you were saying before, it seems as if the way you see it is that essentially piracy needs to be solved first or addressed better for aggregation and pricing to then follow in a certain sense. Because what we are seeing from the analysis we've done is that at the moment profitability is hard to reach at current cost levels, I suppose.
Firstly, it's unforeseeable right now that it will ever be solved. I think individual broadcasters and rights owners can take certain actions for themselves, which, given people's clear desire to spend legally and to then manage their piracy, their legal spend with their illegal consumption, clearly he who does better is more likely to drive maybe a competitor or another broadcaster into the consumer's pirate sphere there. So I think look after your own, do the best you can, and manage it that way. I think you also touched on a very important point about people looking for, less turnover for vanity, and they're now seeking profit for a bit of sanity. I think we definitely see customers looking at their credential use and their existing users and where they're being illegally manipulated with their credentials. They have on their platform a whole host of users logging in but abusing credentials. So they need to sweat that existing audience that they can reach. These people are engaged. They're on their platforms. They're abusing the credentials. So, we've got a big push with our credential sharing and our credential theft service to help customers sweat that database, those consumers already watching them. So I think once you've got them, maximize what you can get out from, make sure that you've got as many people who are on your platform paying to be on that platform.
But do you see that there is a tension possibly between the ability of raising prices and cracking down on credential sharing?
No, as Peter said, what people want to do with their pricing is up to them. That is their choice. I have no opinion on pricing. They have to make those decisions. but once they've got paying customers and abusing credentials or using stolen credentials, they need to manage that and they need to maximize the use. There's a definite correlation. We see with one of our customers, he's moving 8% of sharers onto paid consumption of where they're taking actions. They're moving 8%, and those are people they don't have to market to. The cost of acquisition is enormous for these OTT platforms. So, but pricing is up to each individual organization.
Thank you. Did you want to say anything on credentials?
I'm no piracy expert, but you're going to hear a lot more about it from DAZN and other players in the industry. We need to join forces on this. Piracy is theft. Let's not dress it up. And we need to tackle it. And we need to tackle it from an education perspective, from a regulatory perspective, from a government perspective, from an organized crime perspective. It's rife. It's not just sport. It's everywhere. We have a particular challenge in sport that the value of our content from whistle to whistle, post-game declines dramatically. So we really, really need to cut it off at source. We do genuinely believe that education is a big, big part of this. The other thing that we also believe is with the major, huge tech vendors now, not just being content distributors, but also being content owners, it's absolutely massively in their interest to be all over this as well. So a combined effort from big to small really, really needs to be talked about, and we need to be talking about it a lot more at conferences like this and in the corridors of all of our businesses, is our belief.
Thank you. And Simon, obviously as a vendor of services that tackle with piracy, have you got any thoughts on like what technologies, monitoring initiatives, intelligence initiatives can be used to tackle piracy alongside obviously legal action?
Yeah, I touched on dealing with the soft one on the credentials. Obviously, we feel for live sport, and Cameron from BN mentioned it. Watermarking is important, and where you watermark and how you watermark is really important. And we believe very firmly that you should watermark on the head end for OTT, not with a client base. Otherwise, you're just putting a sieve of a watermark up, really. So we have a leading technology for head-end watermarking with a company called Content Armor, Synamedia Content Armor in Rennes, which is very important. John Espen from Alente showed a slide about, we see a lot of credential theft straight from the CDNs, not credential theft, content theft, hacking the control plane and the CDN of the operator and stealing the content directly from there. First thing, lock up your own CDN, protect that from theft. That's very, very important. And so there are technologies to help this, and as I say, that if you do those, then you're not necessarily going to stop the pirate stealing it somewhere else from another broadcaster. Same content might have different commentary on it, etc. But you're certainly driving up the cost for the pirate. You're driving down the quality of his service. So there's lots of things that can be done, and Peter talked about regulation, education. I think on education, we have quite a lot of data that people know it's wrong. They, as I talked about, them managing their spend and where they go illegal. So there's a lot of people know what they're doing. They don't need educated necessarily, but they can certainly be better marketed to consequences pointed out, etc. So there's lots that can be done with technology, and we spoke about delivery and what technology, making your service so good that it's the service that people will buy. Make your service so good that they don't want the suboptimal pirate service. And that is a host of things that we've spoken about already, including delivery, low latency. I mean, who wants to watch a football game when the neighbor's cheering 30 seconds before? delivering content at scale, cost effectively, high quality. So, you know, we would like to see our Edge CDN deployed more with broadcasters, where there's plenty of things you can do on the Edge CDN in terms of low latency, advertising insertion, watermarking on the Edge, highly efficient, much more scalable up and down. So delivering an Edge CDN, I think, is very important to help deliver a much more reliable quality OTT service.
I particularly liked your point about making the content quality so good that people want to come to you, and I'm sure, you know, nobody would argue.
Make them pirate somebody else. Make sure yours is the best, because they will pirate something. As we've said, they will. They know it's wrong. They've spent. You add up what you need to spend. Everyone in this room, what your media costs. If you're in the UK, you're at 150. You know, everyone always forgets you've got a television license at £15 a month in this country. On top of everything else, you add it all up, and you take average household income, and you go, no wonder people pirate content. So if make them pirate, which they're going to, make it be someone else. Don't be the mug.
Absolutely, and I think that's an important lesson for everyone. I just wanted to make a point about, I suppose, availability, which is a crucial aspect of making sure that people have access to that content. And I want to essentially ask you, Pete, a bit about what DAZN is doing to ensure wide availability of its platform.
I mean, we want to be everywhere we possibly can, anywhere with a screen and an internet connection and a decent commercial deal, we're game. I think it's as simple as that, to be honest. And really, that is not just because I'm head of distribution and it suits my agenda, but we generally want to be where people want to watch. Us launching a channel on Sky HD and Sky Q boxes tomorrow, I think, is a perfect example of that. There are people who want to watch boxing and all the sport that we have in the UK on Sky. They've been used to it. They've been taught to do it for 20 years. Let's give it back to them in the way that they wanted it. But what we'll also give them is, if you sign up through our channel on Sky from tomorrow morning, channel 429, everybody, you will get access to the DAZN app, which will give you a whole lot more that we talked about that OTT delivers. Which will be every screen that we're on, yeah, which is most. And we're at a connected TV conference today. We've recently launched on Hisense, on Foxham, on Philips, and I think that really almost closes our connected TV distribution. One more to do, it's coming. And then we're there, every mobile, every tablet, every screen, every telco, every set-top box, let's be there. If it's Amazon channels and that's the way that people want to aggregate their services, let's be there. So really, going back to my sort of pragmatic partnering, where consumers want to watch, we want to be, yeah, as long as we can strike a good deal.
So it sounds like one of the key learnings that DAZN has essentially made its own is that customers want to be able to access sports essentially in the most convenient way. Are there any learnings that you'd like to share from your past and DAZN?
Really just reiterating exactly what you just said, yeah. We launched without linear channels, yeah, and it came back from the market. The one thing that you can absolutely 100% guarantee in sport, that sports fans will tell you what they want, yeah? And if there are German consumers who have watched Sky channel 435 for 20 years, and we come in and say, no, now your Bundesliga is only on an app, yeah, they don't like it, yeah, and they tell you, and we cater to them, yeah. So I think that's the way that we look at this world. It's not just the new against the old, it's a blend of the two, and see how that can work together, and hopefully over time convince people through all the reasons that Simon and I have been talking about that actually OTT is better, but don't cut their linear channel off if that's how they want to watch Bayern Munich on a Friday night.
Fair enough. I know we're about to overrun, but since we have no other sessions after, I want to take the freedom of asking Simon the last question, if that's okay. So Simon, what are the latest improvements in compression, in end-to-end latency, in reduction of and other network and operation innovations that will improve the quality of experience of streaming sports.
Wow.
Glad that's not me.
Oh, gee, actually, I did touch on edge CDN. That is very important. Get your delivery closer to the edge, and that improves your latency. And there's a lot more you can do from a security and a monetization process on that. End-to-end, we can encode sub half a second with low latency streaming. Now, everyone I'm sure here knows, as you push for low latency, you have some impact on the quality that you're going to deliver. I worked and ran the media business at Racing UK and horse racing for 6 years. We really drove to have low latency, as low as possible we could deliver on internet with Pete's old business, Stats Perform, as is now, into bookmakers at very low latency, but at not great quality. But the latency was the critical issue. And I think we need to think, because no one wants, with the younger audience so engaged to their phones and social media around their live experience. You know, I watch my own, I say children, young men now, but they're getting the result before the television, and they won't put the phone away, but it does annoy them. They're getting the result too early. So I think low latency is very important. We can do that. I think also for OTT operators, there was a belief that it was a holy grail of, low-cost delivery, and it doesn't always prove that. There's an awful lot of content up there that is wasted in technology costs. And I think we recently bought a business called Synamedia Cortex, which is a just-in-time streaming business, and it spins up permanent spot instances as required. I think if for the average encode, people are probably encoding about 5 or 6 bit rates. Mostly, we see 5 of those encodes never used. 70% of the time, only 1 of those encodes is used by the end user. So they're wasting a lot of encoding bandwidth and time wasted on content that's never going to be summoned. So I think OTT operators, as they drive forward, they need to be much more savvy about trying to cut their costs, cut wastage, spin up on demand. And the great thing about someone like Cortex, Pete will know this inside out. He does know this. I know this because they have massive instances of vast demand followed by great drop-off. So I think for sports, you really need to start thinking about your spot instances, high demand, and how you're dropping that immediately off when it's not required. And that, if you've got really good content, you're going to be hammered for 2 hours, 3-hour instances, and then you're going to find very low demand. So there's a lot of money to be saved on your network costs if you're very savvy about how you do it.
Pete, anything to add?
Whatever he said, it sounded great.
Thank you.